right. So I have the extreme pleasure to be talking with Senator Sydney Kamlager, who represents the 30th Senatorial District in the great state of California. Thank you for being on with me. And if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself.
I am Sydney Kamlager, and I am the senator for the 30th Senate District. I represent parts of Los Angeles, parts of Inglewood, South LA, and all of Culver City. So happy to be here with you on your podcast to talk about all things. I feel like we're going to get into something spicy.
Yes, and what is very spicy right now is the budget and what is happening, how it happens. I do want to highlight that you were recently made chair, Senate Budget Subcommittee number 4. Congratulations. Budget subs have a lot of power and do a lot of things that most people don't know about. That's part of the reason why we're talking today. Not all advocacy is the same. Lobbying a policy bill is very different than lobbying a budget request. Yes. If you don't have experience doing it, it looks pretty dang intimidating and complicated, which it is. But let's break it down. Myth number 1. I don't need to think about the budget. I'm just going to worry about my policy bill.
That's how some people operate. And I would say that that is pretty short-sighted. It's almost like saying, I'm not going to worry about how much the ingredients cost or where I should be getting the ingredients. I'm just going to focus on the recipe. The recipe is great because it shares with you all of the steps that you need to do in order to make this amazing dish. But if you don't have all of the ingredients, then what's the recipe? Just a bunch of words on a sheet of paper or on a screen. It's the same with policy bills and budget, because most policy ideas cost. If it costs more than $50,000, $50,001. If it costs, Mr. Gaffer, if it costs $150,000, I just want to let everyone know that I have a gaffer in the back with the lighting. This is
you are from LA,
you know,
obviously.
But how? Yeah. So he's working to get his card. This is a call out to us.
I was just about to ask. Is he okay?
He's wanting an apprentice program.
Okay, union labor only. Yeah. All right.
That's right. So if it costs more than $150,000 on the Senate, on the Assembly side, or more than $50,000 on the Senate side, it is going to find its way to our appropriations committees.
Appropes versus the budget. You mentioned appropriations committee because that would be the next step in the process if you were doing a policy bill. However, just because you do that and you get out of appropriations, you may pass through everything. Does that mean that you've got funding for your bill?
No, it doesn't. Just because something makes it through appropriations doesn't mean it's automatic. So there are 2 tracks that are happening simultaneously. One track ends sooner, and that's the budget track, because by accordance to our Constitution, we have to have something sent to the governor by June 15th. But, you know, our legislative session can go through August or September, depending on the year. Separate tracks. You can have a bill. It has to go, if it costs money, it will be going through policy committees, and it will be going through appropriation committees. It has to cross each of those hurdles on the Assembly side and on the Senate side. And then it has to, and that means committees and then full floor votes. Okay. And then it has to go to the governor's desk, and the governor can still veto. So you can have a bill that fails in a policy committee, which is the merits of the bill. Does the policy make sense? Is this good legislation? You can have a bill stall in appropriations. Maybe it costs too much. You know, maybe the chair doesn't like it. Maybe the governor doesn't want to sign the bill. You can get through the floor votes. and it can die on the floor because you do not have enough votes, or it can get vetoed by the governor. The budget process is you're making requests to legislators, asking them to champion this bill, champion this budget request. They, with you, are working to get it, into a committee, because it has to get into a committee in order to make its way into the budget, the full budget. And then if that happens, and then it makes it into the full committee, the big, large budget. Now, the governor can do a line item veto with a blue pen and scratch things, but that very rarely happens. And if it does, it's probably because, you got up in the wrong ass and you were not nice, and somebody is like, I'm just not helping you. And so, hopefully that isn't happening, excuse the French. But two very separate tracks that both involve money.
And you can't do one, meaning the policy bill track, and think that that solves all your problems.
That's correct.
Because it doesn't mean that you actually have the money, because you haven't gotten it in the budget. The governor will most likely veto it because you didn't get funding for it in the budget. He generally is not going to approve big dollars outside of the budget process. Conversely, though, and this is the part that is really key for advocates, is to understand the opposite isn't true. A lot of policy is done in the budget. I can say this confidently because I used to work with in-home support services, and 99% of the policy, even that didn't have any dollars associated, was always done through budget trailer bill. So what advocates need to think about is, well, if I have a policy that I want, it's going to cost me money. I know I need it in the budget.
Advocates who are savvy, who have built diverse coalitions, who are able to make points that connect to either a number of different regions in the state, sectors within the state, policy issues that address an urgency. Those things can happen permanently through the budget, especially if it's something that the administration is really supportive of.
That's right.
Sometimes what happens is the administration says, hey, this is something I'm interested in, and then they work with a legislator and advocates to say, can you take the ball and run with this, because this is very important.
You're pointing to the big three, which we know are the governor, the pro tem, and the speaker. But it's not just the big three. There's a heck of a lot of people that are involved in the cooking of the proposal that we can't ignore. One of them is the subcommittee chair. There's the reality that leadership follows where the caucus wants them to go. So advocates need to pay attention to all the other cast. There's a huge cast of characters when it comes to the
huge cast. This is an ensemble. This is a musical ensemble.
And if you jump over the ensemble and you go straight to you're not going to get to the big three unless you're a very important person. And that's a whole other conversation for another podcast interview. But you can't just break into the big three. You go through the ensemble, you go through the conversations that you have to have, because at some point everyone gets a say and a buy-in. And as they say, yes, I've talked it through, I know what this is. What you don't want is your budget consultant to say, I've never heard of this idea before, because that's a sure way to get tanked and never come back again. What I encourage advocates to do is, think of it like a cast of characters, and you're talking to everyone every step of the way. The role of the subcommittee chairs and the budget chairs can't be understated, because they architects of what leadership are now looking at. Could you bypass those steps? Who at the end of the day are the real need to be?
Well, if we're going to continue using the movie ensemble metaphor, I would say that you do not want to bypass any steps or any people. So just like you see a movie, right? You're like, oh, these are the leads, but oh, this is an ensemble. And so, there are people who have more time in the spotlight, like the governor, like the pro tem, like the speaker. But then there are also these supporting characters that really help amplify, right, what they are doing, what they are saying. And so budget subcommittee members, budget sub chairs, are considered those very critical ensemble members. But those people do not look good without gaffers, folks doing the lighting, the costumers, right, craft services, and those folks are staff. If you're just going to talk to me and you're not going to talk to my staff, I'm telling you that's bad, because everyone else is talking to me. And it might be hard for me to remember all of those things. And it could get lost in the shuffle. So don't think I just need to talk to the member. Don't think I just need to talk to her staff or his staff person and not the budget staff. Because if they don't have a list, then you could forget about it, because the staff is the one that is putting all of the pieces of the budget puzzle together.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then also you have to think coalition building. Who else am I talking to? Have I connected to other members? If this is an ask that really impacts the Bay Area, who else is on the budget subcommittee that's from the Bay Area? You may say, well, that's too many people. Well, don't they all talk to each other? So it's not too many people if it's the money that you're after. You don't all talk to everyone about your stuff. Yeah. And doesn't it make sense to spread the wealth so that everyone may have an idea of what you're interested in? And you never know the conversations that we end up having with other people that might trigger a conversation we had with you, right? And so if you want to cover all of your bases, it makes sense to think of the full production cast, those in front of the camera and those behind.
That is such a fabulous analogy, and we're just going to keep going with it.
Sorry.
All the world's a stage.
That's right. That's right.
Let's get a little bit into the politics
Okay.
here, which is really the meat and potatoes. Just because a legislator votes yes on your bill, assuming your bill has costs associated, can you immediately assume that that legislator is going to take your budget request and champion it and run with it all the way to the governor?
No. So I happen to sit on appropriations. And I also sit on policy committees. When I'm in the policy committees, I am looking at the policy, what this thing will do. And I may not support it. This has happened. When it comes before me in appropriations, I will support it because appropriations is a fiscal committee. So the appropriations committee is not looking at the policy. And if the appropriations suggested matches the policy, that you would vote yes. That doesn't mean I would vote for it on the floor. The floor votes generally revert back to how you feel about the policy. So just because people say, oh, they voted for it in appropriations, does not mean that that vote will carry over when it comes before them on the floor. People need to remember that, because I've also had people say, oh my God, I can't believe you voted for this bill in appropriations. You support it. You said, no, I support the fiscal portion of the bill. So please do not take any vote for granted. I would argue that you should be shoring up votes every single time a vote is needed to make sure that you know what your vote count is.
There's a difference, right? In subcommittee, if you say, yes, I think this stakeholder proposal is wonderful, I'm going to vote yes, that doesn't mean you're championing it behind the scenes.
Right.
And just because you vote in appropriations committee for a bill doesn't mean you're voting in the budget for the bill.
That's right.
There's different considerations at play.
That's right.
Here,
That's right. And sometimes you might have something that's going well and you voted for it. And then advocates can complicate things behind the scenes. Maybe they're not communicating with the right people, or maybe they're sharing wrong information. And then that budget request can kind of go up in smoke. I have seen instances where, you know, a red flag has been raised about getting something funded. And, you know, letters have gone out and members say, oh, this is really important. And then we all have come together. And then it turns out the information was wrong.
Ooh, that is so bad.
Then it is very hard to restart that, you know, engine to get the thing in the budget. Right.
That's right.
And that there's sometimes, and that in this instance, that group had to go all the way to the back of the line. So,
whatever you do, don't do that.
Don't do that. That's right. And also don't think that, hey, we did it and now it's done, because for the budget, it's done June 15th for us. So you have to keep plugging away until June 15th. And then sometimes, you know, just life happens and priorities shift, you know, so if all of a sudden we have to deal with more raging wildfires,
right,
or if there's a major thing that happens as it relates to the drought, then the thing that everyone says is really important that you may be championing may get punted to the back just because there's something far more pressing and emergent that has revealed itself. So that's also why you kind of can't take a lot of things for granted, and you have to be good at pivoting to make sure that what you are requesting still can pass the relevancy smell test of the day.
That is really important. How do advocates best make their case to the lawmakers? How do advocates build the momentum and get the support they need from the caucus?
So I would say a few things. You know, speak to as many members as possible. Start with the ones that you know and have good relationships with, and ask them for guidance, you know, on where else they think you should be going to see if it jives with your plan. Don't pretend like you're the legislator or you know more, you know, and use acronyms and start in the middle of the story. Start from the beginning. Pretend like we don't know, because chances are we might not. And that's okay. You're not there to reprimand us for not knowing. You're there to educate us on a really great opportunity that you have. And isn't it something that we want to champion? Talk about the impact. It's really great to talk about a program, but how many people is it helping? You know, what is the outcome? What are sort of the measurables? It will help everyone in the city. It will help, you know, 70% of those who are unhoused. It will, you know, feed 10,000 people in your district. It's good to share district information. It's also good to share regional information. Sometimes it's good to offer comparisons. You're getting 5% of what this other region is getting. This is why we're asking for your support. Figure out if there are caucuses that you can talk to, because a caucus means more than one person. And if you are invigorating a caucus full of members, that can help you. Make yourself available to answer any questions and try to be responsive to questions that do come up, because everyone loves to work with a well-oiled stakeholder group.
I like that. Be a serious operation and show that you're in it to win it, and you're not just some fly-by-night, you know.
That's right. Because I will tell you this, what I have found is the advocates that are really well organized, I go back to them the next year and I say, hey, what else do you have?
Oh, I like that.
Because I had a great experience, right? Because they were really informative. They were educated, you know, they knew the issue. They did their homework. They were organized. That is like, wow. And so oftentimes that will happen, and you can inadvertently create a really strong relationship with a member or the member's office through a staff person because we will also get reports from staff. Staff will say, ooh, that group was highly unorganized. They didn't know what they were talking about. They were really combative.
Big deal.
They didn't come on time. That staff person is relaying that to the member, and the member is thinking, well, I don't want to put my staff through that again.
Right. Or they sold me a bill of goods and
That's
I did
right.
some
They said-
research and learned the real truth.
That's right. Oh, they said it would be easy. It's not. Oh, they said it's just a 41 vote, but it's requiring a 2/3. Oh, they said like people don't want that because the members are left holding a bag trying to maneuver. So if you can be well-oiled, it will reap rewards years to come because members will say, this is a really great group.
I like that. Do legislators have the chance to lobby the governor on their?
Yes.
priorities?
The governor spends time with the Senate caucuses and the Assembly caucuses. So we have individual opportunities to talk with him. He has a state of the state every year. Well, it makes himself available and we talk. He has a legislative director whose role is to connect with members to make sure things are running smoothly. So there are multiple touch points between legislators and the governor's office, and that's for budget things and also legislation. Because remember, the governor's office is tracking all of our bills too.
Here's going to be my concluding question. This one came from several people because I actually asked folks to give me some questions. What are the unspoken truths of the budget process? Meaning the elephants in the room, the maybe no one will tell you, but you should damn sure figure this one out pretty quickly.
The elephant in the room is that the pro tem and staff and the speaker and staff play a very real, it is their budget. So don't think that they're not part of the equation. The elephant in the room is the governor's office is also intimately involved. So if you have problems with their office, or if you have problems with the speaker, or if you have problems with the pro tem, you will probably have problems with your budget ask. Okay. And that's real talk. And you can have great champions like us, right? But if it's like, if you've pissed off one of them, there's very little I can do. And real talk is there's very little I may be willing to do because it may jeopardize other asks that I have from other advocates. And like, you just got to be real. Another unspoken truth is, which is probably a reiteration, it's also all about relationships. And if you think that someone has forgotten something that you did, you know what I mean? That went wrong and went sideways, they have not. They may just be waiting for an opportunity for you to come back in front of them.
Yes.
So like, do
not burn bridges.
Do not burn bridges.
Yes.
And then the other unspoken truth is like everything is political. If the trade winds say we have got to focus on high-speed rail, or we have got to focus on broadband, if you're reading in the news that the governor is talking about this one thing all the time, you best believe that that is going to find its way in either a policy discussion or a budget discussion. If your idea is running counter, you need to go back to the drawing board.
In the end, goes back to all politics is local. Look around and what are the people talking about? And that is what the governor is thinking about and what leadership is thinking about. And there's sometimes the reality that the politics aren't there for you.
That's right. So, and that is just the truth, because at the end of the day, there are so many requests out there and you are competing with all of these other ideas, and some are really great and some stink and some have a lot of political momentum. So you just have got to be prepared. And you have got to be thinking about what the politics of the day are.
At the end of the day, the reality is sometimes, or most of the time, it takes more than 1 year to get to the finish line.
It does. I mean, sometimes it takes more than 1 year. Sometimes it takes a different author. You may be working with someone nobody likes, or you know what I mean? Like real talk. You may be working with someone who doesn't have good staff or doesn't have any staff, not good staff, but doesn't have any staff.
Right.
You may be working with someone who, and you don't even know, they had a bad situation with someone in leadership, and like they're working to mend fences.
Yeah.
None of that you're gonna know.
Yeah.
But that may also be in the, you know, underneath the water, right? That's the churn underneath the water. And that can make you have to go back to the drawing board the year after. The good news is you do it every year. The bad news is you do it every year.
And there's nothing wrong. In fact, it's normal and everyone goes through it, and we shouldn't, you know, feel like losers.
Look at it as a learning lesson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how do you learn from the thing that didn't pass the first time?
That's right.
What were your takeaways? How do you tweak your playbook so that the next time, you know, the plays, you know, are more successful? I would not see it as a failure. I would see it as learning. Truthfully, if every time you go and you get something, chances are maybe you're not asking for enough. Maybe your stuff isn't bold enough. I also say use it as an opportunity to grow and to learn so that you can be a really strategic navigator of this system.
This is a complicated system that needs navigation, that is for sure. And listen, your Watch Wednesday videos are so awesome. And I would say quite complimentary to the podcast interviews, because we're trying to, in plain language terms, explain how this crazy place operates. And it's for the people in the end. You know, this is the people's business. And if the people don't understand how the business is run, then we've got a problem, and we're trying to make that accessible. And thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for this opportunity as well. As you said, government is people. Systems are people. So it's really incumbent upon us to learn it so that we can make it as good as it can be for all of us. So thank you for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. You are an inspiration, Senator, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. And thank you, advocates, for tuning in. See ya.
Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.